You ever wonder what it truly means to stand alone? To wake up every day without someone by your side and still face the world with your head held high? Society will tell you you're missing something. You need someone to complete you. But let me tell you this, the man who dares to walk alone isn't incomplete. He's dangerous. Because when you're alone, you have no distractions, no excuses, just you, your dreams, and the fire inside you. But here's the truth they don't want to talk about. Walking alone is not for the faint of heart. It's a test, a challenge to discover who you really are when no one else is watching. By the end of this speech, you'll understand why being a lone wolf isn't a curse, it's a calling. Stay with me, and I promise you'll see the strength, the struggle, and the purpose behind the path less traveled. Living alone without a girlfriend is often judged as loneliness. People assume you're avoiding commitment, afraid of love, or lost. But what they fail to see is that this solitude isn't a prison, it's freedom. It's a kind of freedom that allows you to focus entirely on your goals, your growth, and your journey. When you have no one to please, no one to answer to, you learn to navigate life with clarity and purpose. Let me tell you, that kind of freedom is rare in this world. A lone wolf isn't weak. He's strategic. He moves silently with purpose and doesn't rely on the pack to validate his existence. Being alone gives you time to think, to plan, to learn about yourself in ways you can't when you're constantly surrounded by noise. It's in this silence that you begin to understand what really matters. You stop chasing fleeting pleasures and start pursuing lasting fulfillment. Let's not sugarcoat it. The lone wolf faces storms. There are nights when the silence feels deafening. There are days when self-doubt creeps in. But it's in those moments that you discover your true strength. Because every time you overcome that loneliness, you grow stronger. You become the kind of man who doesn't need anyone to tell him he's enough. You realize that your worth isn't tied to another person. It's something you define for yourself. Solitude is a double-edged sword. It can cut you down or it can carve you into the man you're meant to be. When you're alone, you have no choice but to confront your weaknesses, your fears, your doubts. But that's where growth happens. You start setting goals and smashing them. You develop skills, you build discipline. You become the kind of man who can walk into any room and command respect, not because of what you have, but because of who you are. The lone wolf doesn't stay alone forever. His journey is about growth, not isolation. It's about becoming the best version of himself so that when the time comes, he can build meaningful relationships, not out of need, but out of choice. The lone wolf story is about balance between solitude and connection, between freedom and responsibility. He knows that life isn't about being alone or being with someone. It's about mastering both. So to every man walking alone right now, embrace it. This is your time to become unstoppable. They may not understand your path, but it's not for them to understand. It's for you to walk, to learn, and to grow. When you choose to stand alone, you don't lose yourself, you find yourself. And when the world sees the man you've become, they'll finally understand why the lone wolf is the strongest one in the pack. Living alone without a girlfriend is a concept often misunderstood by society. The assumption is that such a life is lonely, lacking fulfillment, or indicative of someone running away from commitment. This narrative, perpetuated by societal norms and media portrayals, creates an unfair stigma around solitude. But for the man who chooses this path intentionally, there's a profound freedom that emerges, a freedom many never experience because they are too busy conforming to the expectations of others. This freedom isn't about avoiding responsibility or evading the complexities of relationships. It's about carving out a space where you can focus on what truly matters to you. It's about being able to wake up every day without external distractions, pressures, or obligations that might divert your energy away from your own goals. In this space, you have the opportunity to prioritize your dreams, develop your skills, and take control of your time in a way that few people ever truly achieve. This kind of freedom requires strength because it demands that you confront yourself, your fears, your weaknesses, and your deepest insecurities. There's no one to hide behind, no one to lean on, and no one to blame for your shortcomings. It's just you and the life you're building. Without the constant pull of emotional entanglements or the compromises that come with a relationship, you gain the ability to pursue your ambitions with unparalleled focus. Whether it's building a career, starting a business, mastering a craft, or pursuing a passion, you have the clarity and the time to invest deeply in your endeavor. While others are distracted by fleeting pleasures or consumed by obligations they've taken on too soon, you have the advantage of moving at your own pace, setting your own priorities, and shaping your life according to your vision. This freedom also fosters a deep sense of self-reliance. When you live alone, you learn to solve your own problems, manage your own emotions, and find your own motivation. It's not always easy, but it's incredibly rewarding. You develop the resilience to weather life's challenges without depending on others to pick you up. This doesn't mean rejecting help or connection altogether, but it does mean becoming the kind of person who can stand firm even when no one else is around. Living alone also gives you the space to reflect, something that's increasingly rare in a world filled with constant noise and distractions. You gain the chance to understand yourself, your values, your desires, your strengths, and your weaknesses in a way that's difficult when you're constantly surrounded by other people's influences. This self-awareness becomes a powerful tool, allowing you to make decisions that are aligned with your true self, rather than being swayed by external expectations. By choosing this path, you're not rejecting the idea of relationships or love. Instead, you're embracing the opportunity to build a strong foundation for yourself first when the time comes to share your life with someone else. You'll be entering that relationship as a complete person, not as someone looking to be completed by another. The lone wolf story begins with a path often misunderstood, a man living alone without a girlfriend. People around him may view his choice as an act of avoidance, labeling it as fear of commitment or an inability to form meaningful relationships. But this freedom, often judged from the outside, is rarely understood for the depth of its purpose. Choosing to live alone isn't about escaping relationships. It's about embracing the profound and often challenging journey of self-discovery. This man doesn't wake up each day weighed down by the expectations of pleasing someone else or conforming to societal norms. Instead, he rises with a sense of independence that allows him to channel his energy inward toward his growth and ambitions. Without the obligations that come with relationships, he can dedicate himself fully to his goals. He creates a life that reflects his priorities, unclouded by the compromises that partnerships often demand. This isn't selfishness, it's intentionality. Living alone means every decision, every step forward, every stumble backward is his own. It's a life free from external validation, forcing him to find worth within himself. While others may have the comfort of a partner to lean on, he learns the value of self-reliance. The man who walks this path knows that the world often underestimates the strength required to face solitude. It's not an escape from responsibility. It's the embrace of accountability. When things go wrong, there's no one to blame. When success comes, it's a result of his own determination, effort. This journey, however, is not without its challenges. There are moments of isolation, times when the quiet feels heavy, and the absence of companionship becomes a test of his resilience. But these moments are also where he finds the most growth. Solitude forces him to face his fears and doubts, to wrestle with his inner critic, and to emerge stronger on the other side. In a world where distractions are endless and relationships can serve as an easy escape from self-reflection, he chooses the harder path of confronting himself. This freedom isn't just about the absence of relationships, it's about the presence of focus. The lone wolf is driven not by avoidance, but by ambition. He understands that this phase of his life is an opportunity, a rare and precious chance to build something extraordinary without the constraints of external obligations. He hones his skills, sharpens his mind, and crafts a life of purpose. This focus becomes his greatest asset, allowing him to achieve clarity and drive in a way that's nearly impossible for those entangled in the chaos of everyday relationships. The lone wolf's journey teaches a profound lesson. Freedom isn't the absence of connection, but the ability to choose when and how to connect. By living alone, this man isn't rejecting love or companionship. He's preparing for it. He's building a foundation so strong that when the right time comes, he'll be able to offer the best version of himself, not out of necessity, but out of choice. The lone wolf mentality is not born out of weakness or a desire for isolation. It's a deliberate choice to walk a path of self-reliance, discipline, and introspection. This mindset is often misunderstood by those who equate solitude with loneliness or disengagement from the world. In reality, the lone wolf embraces solitude as a means of sharpening his focus and strengthening his resolve. He knows that walking alone requires courage because it means facing the world without a safety net, relying entirely on his own capabilities to navigate life's challenges. At its core, the lone wolf mentality is about clarity. When you're free from the noise and expectations of others, you begin to see your life with a sharpness that's impossible to achieve when you're constantly surrounded by distractions. This clarity allows the lone wolf to understand what truly matters to him, setting his priorities with precision and moving toward his goals with unwavering determination. It's not about shutting people out. It's about creating the space to listen to his own voice and chart his own course. There's a certain strength in the lone wolf's stride, a quiet confidence that comes from knowing he's capable of standing on his own. He doesn't seek validation from others because his sense of worth is rooted in his own efforts and achievements. This self-reliance is not born out of arrogance, but out of necessity. In a world that often values conformity and dependence, the lone wolf chooses the road less traveled, understanding that the rewards of independence far outweigh the temporary comforts of reliance on others. This mentality is also deeply introspective. The lone wolf uses his time alone to reflect on his life, his choices, and his path forward. He doesn't shy away from difficult questions or uncomfortable truths. Instead, he confronts them head on, knowing that true growth can only come from facing himself with honesty and humility. This introspection allows him to identify his weaknesses, hone his strengths, and evolve into a stronger, wiser version of himself. But the lone wolf doesn't move aimlessly. His solitude is purposeful, and his steps are calculated. He understands that every decision he makes, every action he takes is a building block for his future. Without the influence of a pack to sway his direction, he has the freedom to align his actions with his own values and ambitions. This sense of purpose gives his journey meaning, even when the path is difficult or uncertain. The lone wolf mentality also fosters resilience. Walking alone means there's no one to catch you when you fall, but it also means you learn how to pick yourself up. This resilience becomes a defining trait, allowing the lone wolf to navigate setbacks with grace and determination. He doesn't see failure as an endpoint, but as a lesson, a stepping stone on the path to success. Ultimately, the lone wolf mentality is about empowerment. It's a mindset that recognizes the value of solitude as a tool for growth, clarity, and strength. By choosing to walk alone, the lone wolf gains a perspective and a sense of self that is unshakable, preparing him for any challenge that lies ahead. Now, for the man who chooses to live alone, there's a unique kind of strength required to embrace solitude fully. Society often paints this picture as one of isolation or unfulfilled potential, but for the lone wolf, this path is a deliberate and empowering choice. Living without a girlfriend or constant companionship isn't about rejecting connection. It's about prioritizing self-mastery and understanding that true growth often comes in the quiet moments when no one else is around. This journey is not for the faint of heart. But for those who dare to embark on it, the rewards are transformative. Solitude allows the lone wolf to strip away the distractions and obligations that come with romantic relationships or social expectations. There's an undeniable power in this clarity. When you don't have to cater to someone else's needs, you can focus entirely on your own. This isn't about selfishness. It's about building a foundation of strength and self-reliance that will serve you for the rest of your life. In the stillness of solitude, the lone wolf sharpens his focus, deepens his understanding of his purpose, and aligns his actions with his long-term vision. This path also requires a willingness to confront oneself, a challenge many avoid by surrounding themselves with constant companionship. The lone wolf has no such buffer. He must face his fears, insecurities, and doubts head-on, with no one else to distract him from the truth of who he is. This introspection is not easy, but it's essential for growth. Through this process, the lone wolf develops a profound sense of self-awareness, understanding not just his strengths, but also the areas where he needs to improve. Living alone also fosters a deep sense of discipline. Without external accountability, the lone wolf must rely on his own inner drive to stay the course. Every decision he makes is a reflection of his values and priorities, and every action he takes is a step toward his goals. There's no room for excuses or procrastination because he understands that his success is entirely in his hands. This discipline becomes a defining trait, enabling him to achieve what others may only dream of. Freedom is another hallmark of the lone wolf's journey. By choosing to live independently, he escapes the constraints that often come with relationships or societal norms. He has the freedom to pursue his passions, explore new opportunities, and make decisions that align with his own vision of success. This freedom is not just about the absence of obligations. The lone wolf understands that by carving his own path, he opens himself up to a world of opportunities that others may never experience. Ultimately, this journey is about transformation. The man who walks alone does so not because he fears connection, but because he understands the value of solitude in shaping his character and future. Through this experience, he becomes stronger, more self-aware, and more capable than ever before. The lone wolf is not a man without purpose. He's a man driven by it. The lone wolf's journey reveals something that many overlook: the unique bond he forms with himself in solitude. When a man lives alone without a girlfriend, society often interprets it as a lack of connection or fulfillment. But the truth is, the lone wolf cultivates the most profound relationship of all, the one with himself. This bond is not born from selfishness, but from a deep understanding that the foundation for every other connection in life is rooted in self-awareness and self-respect. Living alone grants the lone wolf the time and space to explore the depths of his own mind and soul. He learns who he truly is, not the version shaped by the expectations of others, but the authentic self that emerges when the noise of the world fades away. He confronts his fears, embraces his flaws, and celebrates his strengths. In solitude, he learns to listen to his own voice, to trust his instincts, and to find clarity in his thoughts. This process of self-discovery is both challenging and liberating, teaching him that he doesn't need external validation to define his worth. The lone wolf also develops a sense of independence that sets him apart. While many rely on others for emotional support or guidance, he learns to stand on his own. He becomes his own motivator, his own confidant, and his own source of strength. This independence doesn't mean he rejects connection. It means he doesn't depend on it to feel complete. He approaches relationships from a place of wholeness rather than need, which allows him to build healthier and more meaningful connections when the time comes. In this solitude, he also gains an unparalleled sense of focus. Without the distractions of a relationship, he channels his energy into his passions, goals, and personal growth. He hones his skills, builds his career, and pursues his dreams with an intensity that few can match. This focus isn't driven by a lack of options. It's fueled by a deep commitment to becoming the best version of himself. The lone wolf understands that by investing in himself now, he's laying the groundwork for a future that is not only successful, but also fulfilling. At the same time, this journey teaches him resilience. Walking alone means he faces challenges without a safety net, but it also means he learns how to overcome them on his own. Each obstacle he faces becomes a lesson, and each setback becomes an opportunity for growth. This resilience becomes one of his greatest strengths, allowing him to navigate life with confidence and grace. He doesn't fear failure because he knows he has the strength to rise again, no matter how many times he falls. The bond the lone wolf forms with himself is unshakable. It's a relationship built on trust, respect, and understanding, qualities that many spend a lifetime seeking in others but fail to find within themselves. Through this journey, the lone wolf becomes a man who is not only capable of thriving alone, but also prepared to build connections that are grounded in authenticity and mutual respect when the time is right. The lone wolf embodies a profound truth. His path of solitude doesn't mean he lacks strength or ambition. In fact, it signifies the opposite. Living without a girlfriend, choosing to walk alone is not about escaping relationships, but about prioritizing his mission and purpose above all else. This man understands that every second of his time is precious, and that distractions, even those wrapped in love and companionship, can pull him away from his goals. His life isn't guided by fleeting emotions, but by a vision that burns brightly within him, a vision that demands his undivided attention and dedication. Purpose becomes the compass for the lone wolf. He wakes up each day with a clear understanding of what he's striving for. Whether it's building a business, mastering a skill, or contributing something meaningful to the world, his focus is relentless. He knows that the road to greatness requires sacrifices, and for him, that often means choosing solitude over temporary pleasures or relationships that don't align with his path. The lone wolf's strength lies in his ability to delay gratification, to forego immediate comfort for long-term success. In this pursuit, he learns the art of self-discipline. Without the distractions that come with a romantic partner, he's able to channel all his energy into his work and ambitions. He sets his schedule, establishes his routines, and holds himself accountable. There's no one to remind him to stay on track. He doesn't need it. His drive comes from within, fueled by the knowledge that his destiny is entirely in his hands. This discipline not only propels him forward, but also shapes his character, making him a man of integrity, resilience, and focus. The lone wolf doesn't see solitude as a void, but as a sanctuary, a space where he can think, plan, and execute without interference. He values his time alone because it's during these moments that he connects with his deepest thoughts, refines his strategies, and prepares himself for the challenges ahead. This solitude allows him to, while others may crumble under pressure, he thrives, knowing he's honed his mind and spirit to endure and overcome any obstacle. The world often misunderstands this man, labeling him as detached or cold, but he's anything but. The lone wolf is driven by a sense of responsibility, not just to himself, but to the legacy he's building. He doesn't engage in relationships lightly because he respects the gravity of connection. He knows that when the time comes to share his life with someone, it will be from a place of strength and readiness, not out of loneliness or societal pressure. For now, his purpose takes precedence. The lone wolf understands that greatness requires singular focus, and he's willing to make the sacrifices necessary to achieve it. He walks his path with confidence, knowing that his journey may be solitary, but it's also extraordinary. His solitude isn't a sign of emptiness. It's a reflection of his unwavering commitment to his vision and his refusal to settle for anything less than the greatness he knows he's capable of achieving. In the end, the journey of the lone wolf is not one of loneliness, but of unparalleled strength, clarity, and purpose. It's a path chosen by those who dare to prioritize their growth, embrace their solitude, and dedicate themselves to a vision greater than immediate gratification. The lone wolf is not defined by what he lacks, but by the immense inner wealth he cultivates: self-discipline, resilience, and a deep connection with his own identity. While society may often misunderstand his choice, the lone wolf walks his path with quiet confidence, knowing that every step he takes is deliberate and meaningful. He's a man who values his time, who sharpens his focus, and who faces the world on his own terms. And though he may walk alone for now, he is never truly alone. He carries with him his purpose, his dreams, and an unshakable belief in the life he's building. For the lone wolf, solitude is not a weakness, but a sanctuary. It's where he discovers his greatest strengths, builds his foundation, and prepares himself for a future of extraordinary potential. When the time comes and the right connections present themselves, he will be ready, because he has mastered himself first. Until then, he walks forward with unyielding determination, knowing that his journey, though solitary, is one of profound transformation and limitless possibility.